Hey gang, I'm back for another video. I want to, with this video, review quickly how to find mean, median, and mode using the stat menu and a feature called summary stats in StatCrunch, and also look at how to find range, variance, and standard deviation for both a sample and a population. Okay, and so let's get started with, let's review how to find the mean, median, and mode of a data set. So this is actually exercise 4 of 10 in the section 2.4 exercises. I'm going to go ahead and I went ahead and clicked the icon here to open up my data in StatCrunch, and here I have it. I'll go ahead and maximize this window. And so if you recall from the last video how to do this, if you go to the stat menu and go to summary stats, you will select columns because your data is listed here in a column. So summary stats, columns, and all that data is in a column called variable 1. And then I'm going to go ahead and select from this list mean, median, and mode. If I click on it, all this stuff will clear out over here. I have mean selected, but I can also select other things as well. But the only way to select multiple measures over here is to hold down the control key as you are clicking and selecting them. So I'm going to hold the control key down while I go through the list and click what I want. So I'll go ahead and click median as well and mode. And I did all of that again I made sure to keep that control key held down while I was clicking. So now that I've selected these three things over here, I'm going to go ahead and compute. And there we have it. Their mean is 8.7. The median is 9. If you remember, the median is the middle number in the data set. And then mode, oh, well, man, here's where they copped out. Multiple modes, that doesn't tell us anything. I guess if you get multiple modes, it won't tell you what they are. So let's go over to the data set and let's sort it. Let's go ahead and sort that ascending, and we can go find the modes for ourselves. Looks like there's 2 2s, 2 8s, and 2 10s. And twice is the highest frequency for any of the numbers. So it looks like there's 3 modes. 2, 8, and 10. So this would be a trimodal or multimodal data set. 2, 8, and 10 are the modes. So that's how you find those. That was in section 2.3. So let's look at what we would do in section 2.4 using StatCrunch. What we're going to do now is find the range, variance, and standard deviation. But if you look at your e-text in section 2.4 or the regular textbook, you'll find that there's a slight difference in the formulas, the calculations for population variance and standard deviation versus sample variance and standard deviation. Why is there a difference? Well, samples, when you make calculations for samples, remember that samples are not a perfect representation of a population. So they have to accommodate for that by tweaking the formula somewhat. And so there is going to be a slight difference between the two formulas. So what I want to look at here is, let's carefully read the problem first, because that will tell us exactly whether or not we're supposed to pick population variance and standard deviation or sample variance and standard deviation. So if you look at the problem here, it says that we're supposed to determine the range, mean, variance, and standard deviation of the population data set. Population data set. So in other words, it's treating these 10 numbers as a population. Okay, so keep that in mind. So what that means is when we use StatCrunch, we're going to have to calculate the population variance and standard deviation. So again, if we're going to do that, let's go ahead and go to the stat menu in StatCrunch, click on summary stats, go to columns, or select from variable 1, and then down below we're going to do, now here's the thing, in this list here, these guys, standard deviation and variance, are actually for a sample. Okay, these ones near the top of the list are for a sample, which in most cases that's what you will be calculating most of the time in most of the exercises you encounter in the homework quizzes, or on a test. But if you recall, the question asked to find the sample, the variance and standard deviation for the population data set. So it's treating those 10 numbers like a population. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to find what are called the unadjusted variance and standard deviation. When you're dealing with a sample, they have to adjust the formula, but when you're dealing with a population, they do not. And so we want to find what are called the unadjusted variance and unadjusted standard deviation. So you have to scroll down a ways in the list to find them. These guys are also known as the population variance and the population standard deviation. Okay, and then the other thing we want to find is, I think they asked for the mean and the, hold down that control key while I'm doing this, and the range. So let's go ahead and do that as well and compute. And there they are. The unadjusted variance, also known as population variance, is 19.41. The population standard deviation is 4.4, 4.41 if you round to 2 decimal places, and the mean is 8.7. In fact, if I go back to the homework exercise, I did plug in those numbers. Okay. I do want to add one additional thing. Suppose the question had been phrased differently. Suppose they did not identify it as a population. Suppose instead they called these 10 numbers a sample. Suppose it asked for these measures for a sample data set. Okay, well, if that's the case, if we treated these 10 numbers as a sample rather than a population, when we go to the stat menu and do our summary stats, then what would need to happen is this time we would calculate the regular sample variance, sample standard deviation, and we'll do the mean as well. Where is the mean? The mean and the range. Where was that? There it is. And so this time, we do not want the unadjusted. We want regular, what they call sample variance and sample standard deviation. So when they are unadjusted, like they have down here, when they are unadjusted, it's understood to be population. When you don't have the unadjusted in front as a label, then it's understood to be for a sample. Okay, so we'll go ahead and compute, and you'll see that those are slightly different. They are slightly higher calculations than what we had earlier. In the population variance and standard deviation, we had like 19.41 and 4.4. So these are slightly higher. And the reason is because in the formula for sample variance and standard deviation, the denominator by which you divide by, if you look at the formulas in your book, the denominator by which you divide is going to be slightly smaller, and thus your result will be a little bit bigger. And yeah, we are a little bit bigger with our variance and standard deviation here. And so let me know if you have any questions. You can reach me at nlstanley@mccneb.edu. Thanks very much for watching.
Yeah.